Okay, welcome to another episode of Mom Talk. We have a new guest with us today. Her name is Michelle Connor, and she is from New York, and we met online.
Yes,
Welcome.
thank you so much for having me.
Thanks. We're excited. So, when Victoria and I started the podcast, one of our top things we want to talk about is sleep training.
It's a
And then
big
you found us.
topic.
How did you find us?
So I came to realize pretty quickly that there's like a very negative kind of stigma around sleep training. And I figured one of the easiest ways to reach like a good amount of people would be to go on podcasts for people that already have the platform to kind of help bring more knowledge around it and what it could be like and kind of debunk some of those myths. And I kind of was just like searching for some really like good quality mom podcasts and I came across you guys.
That's amazing. Okay, so you're a certified sleep consultant for kids.
Yep. So we do newborns up to about 7, 8.
Okay, how did you get involved with this?
So originally, so when I first had my daughter, I was the first of my friend group to have kids. And
Mhm.
everyone was just like, "Oh, congratulations, you're having a baby. You're never going to sleep again." And you're like, that's
Okay.
horrible. Thank you.
Yeah, you can
Congratulations,
hear that
maybe
a lot.
not. Like, I don't know.
Hmm.
And I knew that it was going to be something like that was going to be the part of parenting that I was not going to enjoy. Like, people have their strengths, and being up late or up in the middle of the night is not my husband's. And a bomb can go off next to him and he'll sleep right through it. So I knew this was going to fall on me.
Hmm.
So I kind of started following, like, I didn't even know sleep consulting was a thing when I had my daughter. And then I kind of started seeing different sleep consultants on Instagram and kind of following along with some of their tips and tricks and stuff like that. Like, one of the biggest things with a newborn is like I thought they would just fall asleep. Like, you
Right.
just have them and then they just fall asleep and you put them down and then they wake up and you just wait until they fall asleep again, and didn't even realize that you have to like put them to sleep or they're going to be up and super cranky because they get overtired.
Hmm.
So I started following this kind of sleep consultant, different sleep consultants on Instagram, and kind of took to it really well. And then other people started popping up that were like, "Oh, my cousin's having a baby. Can you like talk to her about like breastfeeding or pumping or sleeping? Like, your baby sleeps really well." And then I kind of just became other people's mom friend that I didn't have.
Right.
And then through that, as my daughter got older, when usually kind of those struggles start happening, like people be like, "Oh, like you're getting to 4 month sleep regression. Good
Mm-mm.
luck." And she was fine. And then I was like, she was fine. And then I kind of just kept, helping other people out randomly that were like through links of people. And then I really enjoyed it because I was a mom friend that I didn't have, was kind of my big thing. And then my closer friends started having kids, and I was the mom friend of the group. So it kind of just happened naturally at first. And then my husband was just like, "You should get certified." I'm just like, "You're out of your mind. We're about to have a second baby." Like, I'm a full time teacher. I teach high school science in Brooklyn. I have a toddler. I was just like, "You're out of your mind." And he's just like, just look for it. I said, "Okay." So I looked up the certification and it was move at your own pace. It was online. I was like, maybe I could do this. And he's just like, "Why don't you wait and see? Like, I know so and so is having a baby soon. Like, see if they reach out to you." And I had someone else reach out to me, and I kind of helped them through that first initial newborn where like the newborn was up all night and sleeping all day, and I fixed that really quick for them, and they were just like, "You should do this like all the time for everybody." And I was like, "Okay, I guess so." Like,
Yeah.
I think so, like, I want to, but I'm scared, and, like, do you spend the money on a certification, and what if it doesn't work out, and I'm a science teacher, not a business major, and I was like, "Okay, I'll try." And he was just like, "I think you're gonna do really well," and I kinda just took to it, and it was, like, something that kind of happened organically, and I love it, and it's one of those things, like, you have to love. And if you
Right.
love it, kind of that's when you really start, like, helping those families that really need it.
Yeah, because you were already doing it for your friends, and so it just moved up.
Yeah.
And your daughter is 3.
Yep, she's turning 3 next week.
Okay, so you've been doing it about more years.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd say 3 years like unofficially, and I've been a little over a year in business.
With the certification.
Yep, with the certification.
Okay. I have to say, I've already said this on one of the episodes that we did, but when my daughter was born, she started sleeping through the night when she was 8 weeks old.
Mhm.
Just luck of the draw. But I thought that's what all babies did. So when my friends asked me, I'm like, oh, don't worry. At 8 weeks, you're golden. And then when I realized that was not true, I felt terrible.
Yeah, my pediatrician used to they'd be like, "Oh, how's the babies doing?" And I'm just like, "Oh, they're sleeping through the night." He's like, "Don't say that too loud in the office. Like, there's moms like freaking out next door. Like, don't tell
Yeah.
people that." Like, and they literally were telling me like, "Don't tell people that." I'm like, "Why not?" And they're just like, "It's not often that you see that, so people are gonna feel some type of way."
Yes, for
And I
sure.
was like, "Okay, like, are you sure?" And he's just like, "Don't do it." He's like, "Don't
Mhm.
say it too loud." And it was one of those things that like I slowly realized there's so many people that really struggle, and it's a thing where like I feel like society puts such a like stigma on parents getting support. Like I feel like as a society, we just did a great job, like really pushing like it's okay to get mental health support. And it became like very part of, the conversation, at least in New York, it's very like very open, like mental health services for youths, for adults. Like it's very open in conversation, but there's still this big stigma about like parents getting support. It's like you signed up for this being a parent, like you signed up to struggle, which is not the case. Like and I almost feel bad. Like I had a very close friend who just had a baby and she got a postpartum doula. And I thought that was awesome. I was just like, wow, good for you. Like getting help, getting support. Like I wish I had that, but there's so many people that are just like, wow, that's crazy. Like she got what? And I'm just like, help? Like she
Oh,
Yeah,
deserves? Yeah, that's
yes.
what she got. Good for her. Like
right.
Yeah,
I
like you
wish I got help.
said, I did not even hear of a sleep consultant. My daughter's 13. So I don't think I've heard of anybody doing that until more recent.
Right.
I did not have a sleep consultant, but I did, Google research, whatever, and I did do sleep training with both of my kids. I don't know if I did it quote unquote the right way, but we got there and they slept, and I mean, they're 3 and 5 now, and everything worked out fine, but
There you go. So you did a good job.
something worked. Yeah, something had to
That's what
work.
it
Because
is.
my son, he was colicky. He didn't sleep. Like, we were up, like you said, up all night, sleep all day. He was
Mhm.
backwards. So, sleep training, or I don't know if there's a more proper term for that, but it saved me because I was exhausted. Like, it was
Right.
brutal.
Yeah, and I think people don't realize that like your whole life, like it sounds kind of cliche, but like your whole life changes when you
Hmm.
work with me kind of thing. It's like once you get your child to start sleeping, first of all, especially with the toddlers, you start seeing a completely different behavior pattern during the day. So at first your toddlers are really cranky, really tired, tantrums all the time because they're up all night and they get overtired very easily. You're overstimulated very easily. And then all of a sudden you get them sleeping through the night and it's almost like a different kid standing in front of you. And then you want to go out. You want to go do things. You want to go to that restaurant that you didn't know you wanted to go to at first because you didn't know what they were going to do. Or you want to go to the aquarium because you don't feel like they're going to like freak out in the middle of the day. Like, what do I do? What happens? And it's so many things that people don't realize make such a big difference when everyone is sleeping. Because if your kid's sleeping, then you get more time, whether it's to stay up and do something for you or to get more sleep yourself. And it's almost like you get time back in the day that you didn't even know you didn't have.
Yeah, I mean, that makes complete sense. I need my sleep, so I know my kids need their sleep too.
Yeah, like think of adults. Like I get cranky when I get tired. I
Mhm.
don't want to be touched. I don't want to be talked to when I'm tired. And it's just like kids are the same way.
Right. What age do you start with? Do you call it sleep training? Is that the phrase?
Yeah, so
Okay.
usually called. Yeah.
Okay. So what age do you start that?
So official sleep training kind of starts around like that 4 month mark, between like 4 and 5 months. So technically you could start at 4 months, but I like to start a little bit more formal training closer to 5 months. And I really work on just kind of sleep foundations from newborn to four. Because the idea is the earlier you work on newborn foundations, the less likely you are to have to sleep train formula, like formally. So for instance, my son, I started both my kids, I got very lucky. I never really had to formally sleep train, with the exception of the 2-year sleep regression, which like I cried, not, and I was certified and I cried. Like it was really, really difficult and like completely threw me for a loop. And that's just toddlers. I mean, that's just
Yeah.
toddlers. And that's okay. We made it through. But I really focus. I wish more people would get more support in the earlier ages, like before they're struggling, and build those good sleep foundations from the beginning. And then end up like all the sleep regressions after that, you almost don't even feel. Or maybe they only last a day or two or a week versus 4 to 6 weeks for some people.
Is there a normal age where there is sleep regression?
So you usually see sleep regressions 4 months, 6, 8, 12, 18 months, 2 years, 3 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So basically the entire first year is a wash.
Right.
Like, is a wash
Right.
for a lot of people. And it almost, people really end up building, I don't want to say bad habits, or just like habits that they don't want to maintain during sleep regressions, because that's usually when people are struggling the most. So some families choose to co-sleep and that's what works for them. And some people feel like they have to co-sleep to survive through sleep regressions. Like I hear that a lot with clients that are seeking support, out of that co-sleeping environment, is they don't want to co-sleep, or they never wanted to co-sleep, and they were in the middle of a regression and the kid was up all night and they didn't know what else to do, and the only thing they thought that they could do is co-sleep. And then it kind of works for a little bit until it doesn't work anymore. And that's kind of everything. Like rocking to sleep works until it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Sleeping to sleep works until it doesn't. And you see that a lot of times with all those kind of different sleep associations, is as a child starts to get older and like they build different like cognitive development skills, they realize what you're doing and they realize what's going on. And then there's this big shift of these things that used to work don't work anymore.
Okay. So I was
And
going to ask your opinion on co-sleeping. So that's not a go-to for you.
so technically, I mean, I follow like AAP guidelines, and co-sleeping is not something that they suggest for safe sleep. I think it works for certain families. There's ways to do it safer than others. Like they say, no loose blankets, make sure you have a hard mattress. I mean, I just know I wouldn't be able to, because I can't sleep without a blanket. Like if we just stop at the first, the first cursor, like I need a blanket. Otherwise I can't sleep. I feel like something's going to happen
I need
with
one too.
my
Even if I'm
blankets
like hot, I still need the blanket like touching
here.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like my feet and my hips and my body is all out, but I need just a little bit on, or I get nervous almost.
The comfort. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's one of those things that like I personally know someone that had a pretty traumatic incident from co-sleeping. And that always kind of made me nervous and kind of scared me off. And it's one of those things that's like you might ride a motorcycle and someone might know someone that got really hurt on a motorcycle, so they're don't feel comfortable around motorcycles. It's kind of those similar things where like just because I know someone that something happened doesn't mean it's going to happen to everybody, but that's my experience and that's why I'm uncomfortable with it. But I think if it works for your family and you're okay with it, it's your family. It's not my family.
Okay.
And that's okay. And I think that's I won't work with the family to sleep train a co-sleeping environment, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I won't sleep train if you're co-sleeping.
Okay.
I usually sleep train to get people away from co-sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Again, there's a lot of different like cultures, especially like European cultures. They co-sleep until kids are like 7.
Okay.
You're
And that's
European.
Yes, it's me. No, I
yeah.
love co-sleeping. Now, I will say I didn't when my kids were little because I was afraid of what
Yeah.
might happen. And honestly, they slept so good in their own beds. They didn't need to co-sleep. So that was a win for me. Like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was easy. They were easy on me, honestly.
It was once they were older.
Yeah, once they were older, they're like, I'm gonna come
Toddlers
hang
are
out in
hard.
your room. Yeah.
Toddlers are hard. And what
Yeah.
it is with toddlers too, the second you give in just a little bit, like there's no such thing as just a little bit with a toddler. There's never just a little bit of cookie, it's the whole cookie. There's no just a bite of ice cream, it's all ice cream. There's no like you can co-sleep one night and then sleep in your own bed another night. Like it doesn't, you can't flop. Like
No,
it's really hard to do it.
that's exactly what happened. I was like, just on the weekends. And that turned into forever.
Yeah. Or like usually a lot of families will contact me because it was just on vacation.
Mm.
So they
Mm.
go on vacation and then they co-sleep on vacation because they have one room and that's just easy for them. And then they're just like, I can't get the back of their bed. Um,
I didn't think about that.
yeah, vacation's a big one. That happens a lot because a lot of times people just get one big bed and
Right.
everyone in. Like if especially if the baby's like out of a crib, if it's more of a toddler where they're kind of in that age where like I feel like most people like 18 months and up, they don't wanna pack a crib or do the process of getting a crib, and they're just like, "Oh, just come with me." And then it's really hard to get them back.
Yeah, you're right. I don't want to pack up a pack and play at
No,
all.
no, no, it's
So
supposed to be light.
on vacations, my kids, they're pretty close in age, but they, on our first vacation, I did pack the pack and play. And because my daughter, I don't know, she was maybe 10, 11 months old at the time. And I put her in the pack and play, and she was in that. My son was in the bed, his own bed. We were in our own bed. And next thing you know, she has climbed out of the pack and play, which I did not know she was capable of, up into the bed, and she was sleeping with her brother. So they don't co-sleep with me, but they're 3 and 5 now, and they definitely co-sleep and are like codependent on each other now.
That's super common.
Yeah, so I don't know how long that'll last. It's fairly new, but
Yeah.
they're both sleeping, so I'm not. Is that a
Yeah,
yay or a nay?
they're both sleeping.
Okay.
A
And they're
win is a
safe.
win. Okay.
It's a win sometimes. Safe. I mean, it's one of those things it's there's really everyone thinks there's, like, this perfect picture of what it looks like, but it's perfect for your family.
Yeah.
So that's probably perfect for your family because your kids are going to sleep, they're safe, they're comfortable, they're happy, and you can still continue on with your life that has to happen after they fall asleep, and they're sleeping through the night, so everyone's happy. So that's good, that's perfect for your guys.
What about nap time? Do you say like a scheduled nap time, like, or can you be out and about and if they fall asleep at Target, they fall asleep at Target?
That really I feel like really depends on the age. So anything before 2, it's really good to have somewhat of a schedule. So a lot of the times we notice with anything before 1, 9 out of 10 times is usually a scheduling issue. So they're not getting enough daytime sleep. They're not going to bed early enough because there's this wild misconception that if you keep children up later, they'll wake up later. Psych, they wake up
Yeah,
earlier
that's not
and
true.
cranky and they're up all night and you don't know what happened. Like
Mhm.
if you put your kid to bed at 10, they'll wake up at 5. If you put your kid at 7, they wake up at 7. Like it just
Mhm.
the math doesn't add up with toddlers or kids in general. But a lot of the times we see a big change in sleep patterns just adjusting people's schedule. And that usually makes a really big difference. But I also teach my clients how to live their life. So I never expect families to have the perfect sleep environment with the sound machine and the blackout curtains and it being the perfect temperature of 68 to 72, like the textbooks say, and it doesn't fluctuate. And there's no noise outside the window and stuff like that. Like that's ideal, yes. And we like to formally sleep train and build up confidence in the most ideal environment, but that's not everyone's life. So, how are we learning to adjust schedules? So, what happens if they fall asleep at Target? What happens if you have a party and you're out later? And kind of learning like what to happen and make those adjustments is equally as important. So, a schedule is super important to follow when you can, and knowing how to adjust things is super important when you can't stick to a schedule.
Right.
So, it's always like the norm should be a schedule. It's predictable for parents, it's predictable for children. It makes it really easy for different caregivers. So if grandma wants to come over and take care of something so you can go run out and do something, you're not going to come back to mayhem usually because they have a schedule it's easy to follow. So like when my son went to daycare, I handed them the schedule. I said, "You guys may do something different, but this is his baseline schedule at home. If it's helpful to follow it, it might be helpful." And they were just like, we followed his schedule and it went exactly as planned. And it's like,
Yes, we love a
yeah,
schedule. So I'm all on board for being at home for nap time, being at home for bedtime. I know that can't happen every day, but
No, but like, okay, especially like holiday seasons, I feel like I personally am pretty strict. Like, there's so many places that we have to be and so many nights out. I pick one and I'm like, we'll stay out late this for this event and then we got to go home.
right.
We're going to bed. I'm tired, they're tired because
Yeah,
I'm on a schedule with them.
mhm.
right.
I like to go to bed when they go to bed.
Yeah.
So we're all going to bed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those things that like the holidays get tricky and it's kind of just some people, and it's funny, I feel like it's a little bit generational where I feel like the younger generations are very open with being like, I'm going to do what's right for my family. And I feel like a lot of the older generations are like, you're supposed to do what's right for the big family, the whole family.
Yes.
And that means you show up at this time, you stay until this time and just figure it out. And like I recently went to my friend had a barbecue for Memorial Day or something like that, and it started at 1. And I was like, there's no way I'm showing up at 1 because that's like smack in the middle of nap time, and the rest of the day is gonna be like in the can. So I was like, I'm gonna come, like, we'll be a little bit late because we're gonna just make sure we get naps out of the way and then we could stay a little bit later. And she was like, that's awesome. That sounds great. I told my mom that I was showing up late to her house, and she's like, that's rude. Why would you do that? I'm just like, it's my best friend who also has a baby who knows this is a better idea than coming and have cranky children at the party. So it's totally fine. But it's
Yes.
really she's really funny because she's just like, "Oh, that's rude to go late." And I'm like, "No, it's not. It's
I'm like,
actually."
maybe y'all just forgot what it was like to have that little kids. Like, that's how I see it.
Maybe, but also like things have changed a lot, I feel
I
like.
mean, yeah, they have.
Like the expectation and
Yep,
just like I care about my little family unit. You care more about your family unit more so than like the great aunts and uncles. Love you, but like
Yeah.
these are my children.
right. And I think there's a thing of like my mom would say like, "Oh, you guys would just fall asleep wherever." And we would just fall asleep and then wake up and we just put you in the car and do this and do that. And like that's great, but like not everyone can do that. And
Mm-mm.
not
If you want to
everyone
do that, cool, but yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm that's not something that, like I can, like, sometimes, like, my kids do better with staying up later than they do, like, skipping naps, and that's one of those things where, for instance, like, New Year's, we brought my son and my daughter to a New Year's party because we couldn't find anyone to, like, watch them later, and we were just like, "Oh, we'll stay for a little bit," and my daughter was having so much fun, and we just let her have fun. My son was already we kind of put him to bed in another room, and we were just like, "When you're tired, let us know. When you're tired, let us know." This little girl was up until like 2 in the morning, like, just hanging out with everybody, and I was like, "We gotta go home," and she's just like, "Let's stay," and, like, just had so much fun, and I was like, "It's okay. Tomorrow's a new day."
Yeah, she enjoyed that party.
She had and I thought she was gonna be super cranky, and she had the best time ever, and everyone's like, "Shouldn't you go home?" And I'm just like, "She's fine."
Yeah,
Like
she's hanging on.
Yep, and then it's just like, how do you adjust the next day? So, the next day, we let her sleep in a little bit later. We let her nap a little bit longer, and we move bedtime a little bit earlier, and it's a new day, and then all of a sudden, you're back on schedule.
Okay,
And
so
it's fun.
that's another question. If they are napping, and let's say they're normally a 2-hour napper, but they are sleeping 3 or 4, do you wake them from that nap or do you let them sleep?
It depends on the age. So, a lot of the times with our newborns, we try to get our newborns kind of up after that 2-hour mark, so you don't have that reverse cycling where they're not up all night and sleeping all day. So we usually try and wake up after the 2-hour mark with our newborns. Usually we wake after 2 hours in most cases, with the exception of once you drop to 1 nap. When you drop to 1 nap, we usually especially when you first drop to 1 nap around that between we usually see between 12 and 16, 18 months, they usually drop to that 1 nap, and when you drop to that 1 nap, sometimes we usually see sleep stretches longer to, like, 3 hours, or if kids are sick. If kids are sick, like, all bets are off and you let them do whatever they need to do. That
Mm.
means extra snuggles. That means you stay until they fall asleep. They rock if you need to rock. You nurse to sleep if you need to nurse to sleep if they're sick. And then other than that, we usually try and cap the nap sometimes so they're not getting too much daytime sleep because then that'll kind of eat into the nighttime sleep.
Okay, that makes sense. Cap the nap. I like that.
Yep, cap the nap. It gets tricky when you're trying the symptoms, if you will, of like being overtired and undertired are kind of the same.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes like kids are overtired, but they get that second wind. So you go to put them down for bed and they're like running and bouncing all over the place. And they're just like, they're not tired. They're not tired. We need to get rid of their nap, is usually what happens. And it's usually the opposite. You need to keep their nap and bring bedtime earlier.
Yeah.
When in doubt, bedtime is earlier. That's you have a big day, bedtime's earlier. You miss a nap, bedtime's earlier. You're cranky, bedtime's earlier.
Yes, that's always the answer.
At what age do you stop now completely?
That really depends on the kid. So ideally, you'd like to keep it until around 4, mid 3s. Some kids nap until 5. Some kids drop a nap. Usually what happens is kids drop a nap around 2 because they're going through a sleep regression, and parents just think when they're protesting naps that that should just be the end of it. But a lot of the time, that 2-year sleep regression, they fight naps for a little bit of time, a week or 2, sometimes a little bit more, but they still need the sleep. So, like, keeping consistent even through any sleep regression is really key to getting through it. There's no way to get around it, you gotta go through it. Um, and that's one of those things that we really make sure we stress is, like, keeping a whatever you've been doing, you wanna keep doing. If that means you're laying them down independently, you lay them down independently, and you may have to check in, but you're not creating any new big habit that you wanna maintain. So that's always the tricky part. But usually, like we like to see naps at least into mid threes. A lot of times you don't though, because they could survive at like they're usually fine mid twos without a nap, but they get cranky. They're usually up at like 5 in the morning if they don't have a nap. So a lot of times you see like 2 year olds that go to sleep at like 7 or 8 and they're up at like 5 o'clock in the morning. And my first question is, do they still have a nap? And the answer is usually no.
Mm.
So that you usually start to see like those early morning wake ups because they're overtired. And that's super common is being overtired creates those early wake ups again. But ideally until like mid threes. But that doesn't always happen because a lot of pre-K programs, they don't offer naps or they have pre-K like half day, pre-K full day and the full day. They have like lunch, but not a nap time. And you don't really wanna put them in for a nap when they get home at, like, 3, because then it's,
Yeah.
like, bedtime's, like, 10, and you're like, because the
Yeah,
math just never works out.
my son's daycare, he's 5, he'll be starting kindergarten in August, and they still do a nap, and that dude still naps most days
Yeah.
there. I'm like, "You're gonna be hurting in kindergarten, I guess."
When I went to kindergarten, we had a nap. We
I
had
did
a nap.
Oh, yeah, we
I
did
remem
too.
and I'm just like, I don't know how I napped because I never napped at
Yeah.
home.
When the whole class is doing it, you just do it.
Peer pressured into it.
That's usually what it is. You see a lot of kids where, like, they won't nap at home, but they're taking, like, 2-hour naps at daycare, or
Yeah.
they're sleeping in a crib at
That's
home,
my kid.
and they're sleeping in on a mat at school. But, like, the second you go to put them in a bed at home, it's like chaos,
Mhm.
Mhm.
peer pressure at the youngest of ages.
Yes.
So what were you saying is the ideal sleep scenario? Because also I feel like the older generation was like, oh, you should vacuum around them while they're sleeping so they get used to noise.
My mom, you're
Yeah.
literally like my mom really says that, like, "Don't tiptoe."
Yes.
I so what we like to see is dark room, as dark as possible. Like, ideally, you shouldn't be able to see your hand in front of you. That's usually requires, like, some alteration to the room, whether that be, like, blackout curtains, blackout blinds. Um, I'd love a sound machine, and a sound machine misconception with sound machines. Sound machines are not to put the child to sleep. Sound machines are actually designed to block out the outside noise from waking them up.
Okay.
So sound machine, but not right by their head. We like the sound machine, like, against the busiest wall.
Mm.
So if the hallway is connected to the child's room and that's the busiest one, we put it there. If it's connected, If they share a wall with a younger sibling who's waking up in the middle of the night, we put it on that wall. So sound machine, ideally no nightlight, although we usually start seeing a nightlight kind of coming into play in those toddler years when like fear starts happening. The kids don't really have the cognitive ability to be scared of the dark before like 18 months, closer to 2. So I hear so many clients that are like, "Oh, I have a nightlight on for my child because they're scared." I'm just like, "How old are they?" They're like 6 months. I'm like, "You're scared. They're not scared. Like you're scared that they're scared and they're really not. Like they don't have the ability to be scared." But the
Mhm.
nightlights actually what happens is when people end up in these kind of light sleep cycles, which adults have sleep cycles where you're in a deep sleep and a light sleep, and sometimes you roll over in the middle of the night, you don't think anything of it, and you're right back to sleep. That's what we like to see. And for the kids, sometimes with the nightlight, if they roll towards like the light, for instance, that light can actually wake them up kind of all the way out of their sleep cycle. And then they have a hard time falling back. They recognize they're in their room by themselves and they're not happy about it. And that's generally why we see children that need support frequently because they need support every time they come out of a sleep cycle. And that's really what the struggle is because when they're used to this is how I explain it to all my clients. It's funny. If you've ever fallen asleep watching a movie with your partner, so you're watching a movie with your partner, you fall asleep, you wake up, they're not there, the lights are out, they're in bed, the movie's off, and you kind of wake up startled and you're just like, wait, where'd you go? Why'd you leave me? What's going on? Where is everybody? That's how kids feel when there's a heavy sleep association. So when you're feeding them to sleep, they fall asleep feeding and then you lay them down. So when they wake up, they're not feeding and you're not there. And it's startling. Same thing when you rock to sleep and put them down. When you lay in their bed with them and kind of sneak out in the midst of the night once they fall asleep, they wake up and you're not there. And it's startling, just like when you fell asleep watching a movie with your partner, you woke up and it wasn't the same when you fell asleep.
Yeah.
And that happens. That's that big connection with those heavy sleep associations. That's usually what we see is almost every time they come out of a sleep cycle. So every anywhere between 1 hour and 2, they're up and they need some form of support to get back down.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on cry it out?
I don't use it. So I will never use like a full cry it out. So cry it out, what cry it out is you put the child in the bed, you say goodnight, you say I love you and you leave. And that's the end of the night. Like it's done. Whatever happens, like plug your ears and hope for the best. Like that's a true cry it out. So I never use it. I feel like it's too stressful for both the kids and the parents. And if it's not something that a parent can follow through on, it's not a good plan. And I also feel like if it's not something I would do with my children, I don't expect you to do it with your children.
Mhm.
So there are gentler methods that do involve like a duration of time or crying for some amount of time before you intervene. And those are generally more effective because they're easier to follow through on and they're easier to kind of keep that stress level down for both the parent and for the child. And again, I always give my clients a little bit what I call like stricter method where there might be a little bit more crying, but it usually works faster, and a little bit more of a gentler method, like parent forward method, where there might be a little bit less crying, but it's takes a little bit longer to see results. And that's okay. So whatever kind of I always leave it up to my clients, like which kind of method do you want to go with? And at any point that we're working together, a lot of times we see parents flip from one to the other. Like they started on the gentler method and they want to do the more stricter method and or vice versa.
That would be me. I don't think I could ever let my kid, I don't think I ever let them cry for anything, not even just sleep. I'm like, "Oh, you're crying. Let me help whatever that you need."
Yeah, it's hard, but it's one of those things like I also explained some it actually someone was explaining it to me like this. If your kid's crying in a car seat because they don't want to be in the car seat, are you going to take them out?
No, I'm gonna go home.
Yeah, yeah,
But I won't take them out.
yeah, you gotta go. I'd probably go home too, but you're not gonna take because it's like a safety thing, right?
Mhm.
So people don't treat sleep like that, but like there's so many important things that come with sleep, like brain development, like cognitive development, like so many things, like growth and body stimulus, being able to relax your body and respond, not becoming overtired, not becoming overstimulated, all that is tied into sleep. So when you don't have a good night's sleep, it's almost more detrimental than those 3 nights of crying in the long run. And it doesn't feel good, and I'm open with my clients. It's not gonna be fun. It's not always fun. It's okay to not like the process, but love the results.
Yes, the outcome.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't because I did like I started with 2 minutes and then go back in, recomfort them or
Yep,
whatever,
it
back
happens,
down
yep.
5 minutes, 10 minutes, and kept going back in until they were asleep, is
Mhm.
how I did it. And it was not fun.
No,
But
it's
once
never
they were sleeping through the night or sleeping as long as they're supposed to, like, it was worth it and it was fun. And
it's good.
I was a better mom because I was not sleep deprived.
I think that's what a lot of it is, like, people don't realize how much you need it, and it's okay if it's not working for you anymore. And that's one of the big things, like, people call and you feel so bad because like, they just instantly feel like you're like, "Oh, I know I did something wrong. I've been rocking them to sleep," or like, "Oh, I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I've been co-sleeping," or I've been and I'm just like, there's no should and should not have done. Like, wherever you're at, you're there, and that's okay. We'll start there, and we'll get you to where you want to be,
Yeah.
and that's okay. And I think, like, even people like, I know people who wanted to co-sleep and loved every bit of it, and then they didn't, and that's okay too. It's okay to say this isn't working for me anymore, or this isn't working for me right now. I don't like this experience because of this. So like, people think like, oh, well, they're 6 months, they're 8 months, they're 9 months, they're gonna be up all night. They're gonna wake up 3 or 4 times a night. Like that just is what it is. But it's not. Like usually you could start seeing longer sleep stretches between 4 to 6 months, you usually probably don't even need those feeds anymore if you're feeding properly during the day. So that's what it usually comes down to. Like sometimes people try and sleep train, but they don't have a good daytime schedule. They don't have a good feeding schedule, and it's a hot mess because the kid's not set up for success before you start, and everyone's crying by the end of it, is really what it is.
Mhm.
That's why like people just like read stuff online and they're just like, okay, I could do it. I feel good. Like this might be something that works, but no one knows what to do when your kid doesn't follow the rules. You know what I
Very
mean? You're just
true.
like, like, okay, like follow this. And even like the time thing is like that's like more of like a Ferber method where you're going in every once in a while, but they don't really tell you what to do. And like, your kid's kind of not crying, but then the 2-minute mark goes off. Like, do I go in? Do I not go in? Like, I guess I go in because the PDF tells me I should go in at 2 minutes. And then it just becomes worse because maybe the child didn't need support at 2 minutes. And you don't really know what to do or how to adjust. Or like if they fall asleep at Target. The course that you just paid money for doesn't tell you what to do if your kid falls asleep at Target. So do I push bedtime? Do I not? But when you work with a sleep consultant, you have that one-on-one support where you say, "My kid fell asleep at Target. What do we do with bedtime?" Or
Right.
like, "My kid is flipping out. I don't know what to do, and I don't feel like I can handle this anymore. What should I do about this?" And then you have kind of this I like to explain it as like you have the best mom friend you always needed and didn't know it until you work with a sleep consultant because they're usually people that love parents and love the experience of being able to get a better night's rest. So it's kind of like I always say I'm there to coach the parents and you're there for your kids. So I don't necessarily work directly with the child, although I do work very closely with my toddlers one on one. I send them videos and messages and stuff to kind of help motivate them as well. But as far as like the babies go, like I don't ever really come in contact. I might not even see their kids ever.
Right. So are you like open availability? Like, do they text you when they need something? Do they call you? What does that look like?
So usually we do like an intro call, we do an intake form, contract, like paperwork stuff. I have people do 3 days worth of logs to see what natural patterns are going on. And then I create a sleep plan. So the sleep plan includes like a custom schedule, ideal environment, those two sleep training methods. One's a little bit stricter, one's a little bit gentler. And then we do a big training call with anyone who's involved in the sleeping bedtime, nap time process. Sometimes that's a grandparent, sometimes it's a nanny, sometimes it's mom and dad on the call. And then after that, when they say, okay, I'm ready to start the plan, sometimes it's the next day, sometimes it's Monday because they have a big weekend, then we usually text back and forth. So anything that they need throughout, I usually make sure I'm super available during bedtime specifically because that's usually the first hard part. If you can get through bedtime, you can kind of at least what to do through the middle of the night. So I'm not on through the middle of the night. Like usually I tell my clients that like usually I stop answering my text messages around 9. Unless we're like first few nights and like things are going on longer, that's totally fine. And then I always check in the morning. So how nighttime go? Were there any wake ups? What are we seeing? How do you feel? Like how do you feel like it went? And check in with the parents. But usually it's back and forth like texting through the day. So what happens with naps? What happens with scheduling? Should I move the nap earlier? Should I move the nap later? Do we bump bedtime? Like that's all done via text.
That's so great. They just got you at their fingertips, literally, like you said, a friend. Like
Yeah,
I
it's
could be
literally
texting Victoria if I needed something. So
yeah, you're just like, my kid is screaming. I don't know what to do right now. And you're just like, that's me. Like text
yeah.
me. Because a lot of times, especially with toddlers, is really where toddlers are so hard. Like, let's just put that out into the universe. Toddlers are so hard. And it's okay to feel like it's hard. You see parents start getting like that afternoon anxiety because dinner's coming. And then once dinner's coming, that means bedtime's coming. And you kind of see that anxiety start building from like late afternoon on because you toddlers are unpredictable. Like it can take hours to get a toddler to bed. It could take 2 minutes to get a toddler to bed. And you don't really know what your night might look like. And that's kind of when you start seeing like that mom anxiety, kind of, or parent anxiety because dad's involved, like starting to build up. And toddlers are tricky. It's not always a cut and dry thing. It's not like my plans for my younger kids are very similar from one to the other. My toddler plans, not a single one is the same because every toddler is different. So some kids require a lot more pre-planning work, or they require a lot more motivation. They require a lot more, like prizes and instant gratification. And some kids are like, you can keep your stickers. Like, I don't want a sticker. Like, get away from me with your stickers. Like, and so it's funny, but toddlers can be really tricky. So that's kind of
And
those
my
big
anxiety
things.
started, I think 3. 3 was the age.
Yep, three's hard.
Yep.
Usually it's like one of those things where it's you don't even realize it's happening. And sleep, especially with toddlers, changes overnight. Like it could literally feel like a light switch, which is what even for me, like I was saying earlier, that 2-year sleep regression was a light switch. Monday, she went to sleep so peacefully and pleasantly, and Tuesday was mayhem. Like it was screaming, it was crying, she was trying to climb out of her crib. It was like I was like, I don't know what's going on here. Like this is not how this is supposed to happen. And it's one of those things that's like those moments when you're like, I don't know what to do. And you're working with a sleep consultant, you're literally like, I don't know what to do. And I'll tell you exactly what to say to that toddler. So tell them this, and then tell me what happens. Or like they're screaming,
Play by play.
they need to go potty. And you're just like, okay, this is exactly what you do. They're just like, okay, that worked. I'll text you in a few. You see what happens. But it's literally like those first few nights are literally like a play by play, especially with our toddler group, because they have the longest to do list in the entire world at
Mhm.
7 p.m.
Yes,
So,
they do. Yes, they do at bedtime. They've got the list out.
but I got this. I need a snack. I need a drink. I need a this. But wait, it's too dark. It's too late. It's too warm. I'm too cold. And you're just like, and you want to answer them and you want to keep like, okay. And you're trying the whole time to keep calm and keep consistent. And okay, let me get you this. Let me get you that. And then by the end of it, you're like, all right. Or it's like that big daddy like scene where he's just like, all right.
Yes.
It's like, I get it. I get that scene now.
Yep. So do you think everyone could benefit from having you in their life? Like, or is it just if you don't think they're sleeping well? Or do you think it'd be beneficial to start at 4 to 5 months with you and get it going on the right foot?
I would love to start with more parents with newborns.
Yeah.
Like that is the trenches. And that's when like the biggest shifts can happen. Like those reverse kind of cyclings happen where they're up all night. and sleeping all day, and that's really hard to get out of if you don't know what you're doing. Um, like, I wish more people would tap into support in those newborn stages when things are the hardest, because your hormones are all over the place, you feel a little bit different in your body, you don't know if you're doing this right because you're new at this and they didn't give you a manual when you left the hospital with your baby, and you might be struggling with other, like, breastfeeding, formula's not working, colic, dairy allergy, eczema. Like, there's so many things that play into everything that I wish more people tapped into support from the hospital.
Oh
Or,
yeah.
like, that there was more, like, there's lactation consultants in the hospital, like, but there's no one there to support you, like, building sleep foundations.
Hmm.
Like, I wish kind of there was more support there, and then the younger you start, the easier it is, but, I mean, I've worked with kids that never slept in their room ever, and they're 4, 3.
Yeah.
So, like, some people they call and they're just like, "Is it too late?" And you're just like, "There's no such thing as too late."
Yeah.
It might take us a little bit longer, but it's not too late.
So since you do the texting and calling, will you see clients from anywhere?
Yeah, so I rarely have a client that's in my neighborhood. I
Okay.
have I have 1 or 2 that are in, like, my actual neighborhood. Some are on, like, Long Island. I live on Long Island, so some are on Long Island through, like, different Facebook groups of kind of previous clients have referred me out, but I've worked with people in Washington, Iowa, all over, California, Florida. Um, the time changes get a little tricky. You're just like, no matter how many times I do it, I'm like, "What time is it there?"
Yep.
And then I kinda schedule everything off that.
Well, maybe
But
you'll add Tennessee to your list next
Yeah.
yes.
after this chat.
I feel like I want one of those, like, scratch off maps that, like,
Yes, you
everywhere
need
you
one.
travel, I feel like I want one for, like, my business, or, like, every time
Yes.
I work with someone in a state, I wanna scratch it off.
Yes, that's what you need.
I'm
Is
gonna
there
have
anything else you want to talk about that you think parents need to know?
I think one of the biggest things is get help when you need it. Like, you don't have to struggle. Like, it's not part of struggling is not part of parenting all the time. Like, yes, you're going to have hard nights. Yes, you're going to have hard days. Yes, you're going to go through sleep regressions, but like having and trusting your gut too. Because even things with like, I feel like some pediatricians are very quick to say like colic is the issue when there may be a dairy intolerance going on, which a lot of the times I feel, I don't know why now so many more kids have a dairy intolerance or dairy allergy than a long time ago. I don't know what it is, but I've personally, being a sleep consultant and having just kind of friends that I've been close with, both of my kids were dairy and soy intolerant. So they couldn't have dairy, couldn't have soy for the first 8 months of their life. And then they kind of grew out of it. Both at 8 months too, which is funny. And then I've caught 5 other people who's were telling me kind of these symptoms of what was going on, and their kids tested positive for a dairy intolerance. So
Wow.
I'm not medically certified. I am a mom just telling you to talk to your pediatrician. A lot of times that newborn not able to sleep unless they're sitting up, not able to sleep unless they're in a swing, which is slightly tilted up, that high piercing scream and really thrusting, kicking their legs, those are could be all signs of issues with dairy. And the second you take dairy out of their diet, they're like a brand new kid. And it's literally almost that fast. So a lot of times I think like I would love there to be kind of more information around things that parents can be aware of to look out for, like those little symptoms. Mucus in the stool is a surefire seal of like that's a dairy intolerance or soy intolerance issue in most cases. And it's so easily fixable, but everyone is so quick to say like newborns cry, like that's what newborns do. Like, but there's something that just doesn't sit well with that all the time, and like trusting your gut. So like I feel like everyone's so quick to trust people telling them advice and just do this, just do that, just do this, just do that. But kind of trust yourself too, because there's certain things that like you might not like the answer that your professional that you chose maybe gave you.
Yeah,
Ask
it's
more
your own
questions.
tuition.
Yeah, like, ask more questions and, like, be the second you said colic with your kid, I was just like, "I wonder if they tried dairy because that's, like, something
We
that, like."
did. We did. I was breastfeeding, so I tried stopping my diet of dairy, obviously. And then we even went to formula just to ensure. And
Yeah,
no,
just colic. Sometimes colic is or acid reflux is just a thing sometimes, but anytime I hear someone say, like, "Oh, they said my baby's colicky," I'm just like, "Did they test for dairy?" Because
they
that's
never
super common.
tested, I don't think.
I don't think he was
I just like kind of
he tried it.
eliminated, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
never had them tested.
So they usually so anyone who is interested in getting it tested is you usually just take like a diaper with stool in it and you just bring it to the pediatrician and they usually test it for like blood in their stool. Because they could test positive for blood in their stool and you would never see it. Sometimes. Sometimes you could see it, sometimes you can't.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really a big one because that's really gonna affect sleep. Like then you're playing it once you're playing against like medical cards, if you will, like the perfect environment is not going to fix someone in pain.
No.
Right.
So I think that's definitely a big thing is like trusting kind of your gut and asking for help because I feel like enough people don't ask for help and think struggling is just part of it. Like I'm supposed to struggle. I chose to have a baby. I'm supposed to not sleep anymore until they're this age. And I think that I would love to see more people ask for support early on before they hit that point where like they just can't anymore. Because once you hit the point where you just can't, I always feel so bad for how much time they lost before that.
Yeah.
Because it's literally lost time
Yeah.
because you're either up all night, you're exhausted during the day, you're not getting stuff done, and that's just what happens when you're sleep deprived. Like, sleep deprived is a thing. That and I there's so much misinformation in mom groups online, like, the amount of false information that is put out in these mom support groups, and I don't think anyone does it with, like, bad intentions, but there's wild misinformation online that's, like, concerning. There's a lot of really unsafe sleep suggestions being put out there. My least favorite is people telling moms who breastfeed that, "Oh, your child's not sleeping through the night because 'cause you're breastfeeding, like, try formula instead," and that is not the case at all. So there's some science behind that where, like, formula technically takes longer to digest by like, scientific terms, but that doesn't mean that they're gonna sleep longer because they're given formula. Like, I have 2 breastfed babies, a lot of my clients are breastfed, and they're sleeping through the night just fine. So, like, you don't have to switch to formula if you want your child to sleep through the night. That's a big one you see all the time.
Hmm.
Putting, like, rice
Rice.
cereal in
Yeah.
bottles, it's super unsafe. And a
Yeah.
lot of things, it's just like, "Well, I did it when, when you were little and you made it." It's just like, there's a lot of other babies that didn't make it that did the same thing, unfortunately, is really what it is, like, the wild misinformation online is crazy.
I definitely didn't know about that. I haven't been in a mom group for littles in a while.
It's for the best, it really.
Yeah.
Like, I, like, stay, like, present in a lot of them because like, I do get a lot of clients, and I am very fortunate that I do get to connect with so many moms through these groups, but it's very hard to not feed into some of the false information. That's and even, like, wanting to correct it, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want people to like, people say, like, "Take the Snuggle Me DACA tots and put them in a crib and they'll sleep great." And it's a super huge suffocation risk. And, like, yeah, maybe you did that and your child did not suffocate, like, thank God, but
Right.
that doesn't mean somebody else is gonna do it and they're gonna have the same outcome. So, like, you see that a lot, and it's so hard to be like, "Don't do that, don't listen to them," like,
Yeah.
and going back and forth with certain like, I have a 2 comment rule, like, I will comment on something twice, and then you have to tap out because you're only certain people will they spend the whole day just arguing back and forth.
Yes,
So
they
I
will.
get my piece out. I make sure I feel good with the information that I put out into the internet and I put out into the world, and I can't change what everybody else is gonna do, but that's hard. You see some wild the DACA tots are really upsetting. The stop breastfeeding to get your child to sleep is super upsetting. The babies are supposed to wake up all night long.
You're like,
No.
no, call me.
Like, don't
Let me
listen to
help
them.
you.
Yeah.
And there's people that really will, like, that happened recently actually, where someone posted like, oh, like a mom was like, I'm desperate. My son's up 7, 8 times a night. They're 10 months old. I don't know what to do. And people were slamming her.
Mm,
Like, that's what's supposed to happen. Babies are supposed to be up all night so they don't, suffer from SIDS. And you're just like, let's scare people more while you're at it, because the second you throw SIDS into the equation, like, that's petrifying for new parents. Like, people
yes.
were commenting like, my baby's been sleeping through the night since 6, 8 weeks, like, are they okay? And I'm like, yes, they're fine, like, please, they're fine, like, don't worry. But it's like, you can't 2 comments. Like, you get 2 comments on that thread and then you got to tap out because you'll just spend all day on it. So
Yeah.
definitely do your research, ask for help from professional people, and trust your gut. But definitely know that, like, the earlier you start, I love when people purchase newborn packages for baby showers,
Oh,
because
that's
that's the
great.
best time, because people don't spend money on themselves when they're having a baby because they feel like they have to spend money on their baby. So they never do something for themselves. But it's actually a combo, because you're doing something for the parents and you're also doing something for the new child coming. So it benefits both. But I think I love when people purchase for baby shower presents, because you get, what I usually do is I do a full newborn guide. So the manual that you wish you left with, I have made for you.
Oh,
Um, and then there's 5 days worth of support after you come home. So parents will have their baby. I usually tell everyone, take 2 or 3 days to get your feet on the ground in your home after going through, like, the initial training call. We'll usually do initial training call before the baby's here or after, depending upon when they purchase it. My baby shower presents, usually we do a little bit of a training call before the baby's born. I said, get your feet on the floor, take like 2 or 3 days once you're home. And then I give 5 days worth of support for our newborn. So working on things like wake windows, full feeds versus snacking feeds, building routines, not schedules, because you can't keep a newborn on a schedule. Um, Ideal environments, swaddles of all sorts of kinds, because now there's 100 and it's never that easy anymore. Safe sleep is a huge one that we focus on. I'm really passionate about safe sleep. Um, that's a big one. But I think I'd love for more people to think about their friends that are having babies and getting them help and things to make their lives easier, like postpartum doulas, lactation consultants, sleep consultants to build foundations, like house cleaners and their laundry done. Like, those are the things that people need. Like, the baby has enough onesies, they have enough pajamas. Like, we only need one car seat.
right. Yeah. Okay,
So,
so where can people find you?
so I'm on Instagram under sleepyheadsols, on Instagram, and then that's also our email account as well. So we have sleepyheadsols@gmail.com. That's also our website, sleepyheadsols.com. So people can feel free to follow, message me directly on the Instagram. So I run the Instagram, it's my business. So you'll speak to me directly. I usually answer pretty quick. I'm a teacher, so off for summer soon. So in the summer, I'll answer extra quick for most of the time.
Awesome. Good for you.
I know. So that I'm looking forward to that. But we also have a lot of stuff planned for the summer. It's always busy. You think it's
Right.
like calms down, but then you're like, oh my God, all this stuff I could fit into
Yeah, we
these
got to fit
days.
all this in. Yep.
So we got a lot of stuff planned, different groups being done, some online classes starting soon. For parents, just kind of like master classes, like bedtime routines and mastering naps have coming out kind of over the summer. But even getting started with as simple as, like, I have daily sleep schedules for ages 4 months to 2 to kind of take the guesswork out of a good schedule. I offer kind of 2 schedules for every age, because not every child's on the same, like, sleep patterns, and that's okay. So, like, getting, as someone who just wanted to, like, doesn't know where to start, that's a good place to start. As simple as just start with a good schedule. So the daily schedule guide, I have a newborn guide, I have a sleep regression guide. All those are found on the website if you kind of people want to dip their toes in the water, but not really sure if it's something for them. Like, that's always like a great place to start.
Okay.
Awesome.
That's amazing. We'll
Yeah.
link everything so all the listeners, y'all can have it. And we
Yeah.
appreciate you educating us tonight. This was so
Yes,
good.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so happy to kind of get more information out, and every sleep training is not cry it out. Like I never use it. You can get help with being responsive. You can get help with being involved. And I think that's a big thing to know.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
Yes. Thank you
All
so much for
right.
having me.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.